Yeah. Oh yeah.
Turn the button on.
Okay. All right.
Good evening, all. So, please remain standing while my chaplain, Imran Rashid, will say a few words.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, ever merciful. Good evening, everyone. Respected Mayor, councillors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. May Allah be peace and blessing of Allah upon you. Today, I'm honored to speak about the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and its efforts to promote peace, harmony, freedom, equality, and selfless service to humanity. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community was founded in 1889 by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him, who claimed to be promised Messiah and Imam Mahdi. The community is present in more than 200 countries and is dedicated to reviving the peaceful teaching of Islam under the guiding principle, love for all, hatred for none. The Holy Quran teaches the peace is founded upon justice. Allah the Almighty says, indeed Allah commands justice, the doing of good, and giving the kindred, and He forbids indecency, evil, and rebellion. Currently, under the leadership of the fifth Khalifa, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community continues to champion peace on a global scale. His Holiness has addressed parliaments, world leaders, and international organizations calling for justice, religious freedom, and mutual respect as the foundation of lasting peace. Through his annual Peace Symposium and his message of dialogue over conflict, he consistently reminds the world that peace can only be achieved when human rights are upheld and all people are treated with fairness and dignity. His message is simple yet profound. One of the community's greatest humanitarian contribution is Humanity First, an international charitable organization established in 1995. Humanity First serves people solely on the basis of need, without discrimination of religion, ethnicity, or nationality. Through Humanity First, volunteers provide emergency disaster relief, food assistance, clean water projects, healthcare, education, orphan support, and programs for sustainable development in many countries around the world. These humanitarian efforts reflect the community's belief that serving humanity is one of the highest forms of worship. By helping those in need, safeguarding human dignity, and promoting equality, Humanity First continues to build bridges of hope and friendship across communities. May we all strive to live by the beautiful motto, love for all, hatred for none, and work together to build a more peaceful and compassionate community and world. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Imran. That was lovely. Okay, if everybody would like to be seated. I'm signed in, good. Could everybody ensure they've signed in with your voting card? I'm going to read the fire evacuation procedures. So there's no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the rear of this room. Go down the stairs unless otherwise instructed and meet in the War Memorial Park. Members, please note that this meeting is being webcast live on the internet. Please switch your phones off or to silent. And please can I remind members and officers that in order to be heard clearly within the room by those present and on the webcast, that you must speak directly into your microphone. Thank you. Just make sure I'm on silent. I'll give everyone a chance to settle down. Okay. Moving on to item 1, apologies for absence. I have Councillors Carr, Perry and Putty. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got apologies from Councillor Jenkins and Councillor James, and I'll be answering Councillor James's questions this evening. It's a personal issue while she's not here.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Gavin James. Councillor Minas Bound. Councillor Ibrahim.
Apologies from Councillor Hines, Councillor Harper. Thank you.
And any other further apologies? No. Right, declarations of interest. Oh, sorry, Paul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Put you on the list.
Councillor Jordan.
Moving on. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Grassi.
I'm a parish councillor at Old Basin and Litchpit Parish Council. The agenda item 11 is Old Basin and Litchpit Community Governance Review, final recommendation.
Councillor Phillimore.
Hi, Madam Mayor. Page 89, 9.1, Winkelbury Stadium lease surrender. I'm a historic previous director and treasurer of Basingstoke Town Community Football Club.
No more? Excellent. Right, moving on to item 3. To turn to the minutes of the meetings held on the 14th and the 21st of May and the 18th of June 2026. I'd like to move that the minutes of the meetings be signed as a correct record. And remember, the only part of the minutes that can be discussed is their accuracy. So I'll move the minutes, and anybody have any comments on any of them? And if not, I'll ask the deputy to second.
I second.
So do we have everyone agreed? Okay, announcements. Haven't really prepared anything. I have been very busy over the last few weeks, as always. Seen some, as usual, it's just more of the same, but it's amazing. I'm starting to find how many choirs we have in the borough, and actually how good they all are, which has been, really nice. I'm not a particularly sort of a classical music or sort of mainstream music person, but there's some amazing skills out there, and it's great to see everybody having a good time with it. And also some of the organised fetes and things we've seen have also been fantastic. And it's what's really hit me is the amount of work that so many people within this borough put in to making life better for everybody. But that's all I'll reflect on for today, and we'll move on. So I believe we don't have any questions from members of the public. And item 6, petitions, we also have received no petitions. So item 7 is to receive resignations from committees and to make any necessary reappointments. We still require to appoint one councillor from either the Labour or Liberal Democratic group for the Crime and Disorder Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I'll call for any nominations from either the Labour group or the Liberal Democrat group for the Crime and Disorder Joint Scrutiny Committee? Councillor James.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Conquest.
Seconder? Thank you, Paul. And does everyone agree? Excellent. Right, the other one was receiving resignations from outside bodies and to make any reappointments and fill any existing vacancies. So that's actually, we've got one which was around Loddon Social Enterprise, which was to agree that yours truly, myself, Councillor Tustain, replaced Councillor Miller, because we had a bit of misunderstanding about that, but it's all been resolved amicably. Thank you. Has everyone agreed on that? Thank you. Right, so we seek, I've done that one, call for any other nominations to outside bodies. It's like silence in the classroom, isn't it? Okay, right, now we'll move on then to item 8, which is the capital programme outturn for 25-26. So Councillor James is to move it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Harvey. Right, okay, does anyone wish to speak? So, Councillor James, you need to move it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the capital outturn report for last year's finances. You'll note we spent £16.3 million on capital programmes. This is £1.1 million under what was expected. This essentially relates... and also I have to stand up and talk about to sort of compensate. One of the real challenges around the capital programme is the expense of any kind of development and construction has increased and keeps increasing, which means when you get a delay, suddenly the scheme costs slightly more than you originally forecast, hence trying to bring other schemes forward when other schemes slip beyond your control. There is an addition in there for a new capital scheme, and we are seeking approval. So there's a small amount of now. So the major scheme, of course, in the new request is for Basing View. This money will in a large part be used to demolish Farnham House. It's been through Cabinet. There are holding costs related to Farnham House. We've spoken to a number of sectors to see if there's any interest in Farnham House, and there isn't. So we are looking to demolish the site, and this funding will allow us to get on with that and remove those holding costs. In addition, it will increase the value of the land as we work with investors to lead it to a next generation. By curious coincidence, Madam Mayor, I'm sure you'll be aware that Farnham House was opened in 1973, and that year something else exceptional happened. A historic moment happened. There were shadow elections in this council because 3 councils, Basingstoke Rural, Basingstoke Urban, Kings Clear and Whitchurch, all came together under a Local Government Reform Act that meant we had shadow elections, which effectively created this council in 1973. If it's approved, this addition to the capital programme, by weird coincidence, Farnham House will, subject to tendering and all the other procurement processes we have to go through, it is quite likely that Farnham House Tower will no longer be visible in 2028, exactly the same year as this council. It's kind of weird. There you go. So we're asking for your approval to, approve. Obviously, you can only note what's happened, but approval to add that to the capital programme. It is being funded by a number of property disposals we've made in recent times in order to make sure we can get best value for taxpayers from our property assets. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. So do I have anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Isaac, sorry. Yes, I forgot to say, Paul, do you wish to hold on to the, you know what I mean? So, reserve your right.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. When he steps down in 2008 or earlier, I'm sure that, like Sir Keir Starmer when speaking recently about this country, Councillor James will want to leave Basingstoke in better shape than he found it. Time will tell, but at least we can be sure with Councillor James that when reflecting on his achievements, he will not be suffering from the massive delusions about his track record of failure, as is the case with our soon-to-be sacked Prime Minister. Now that I've got that out of my system, can I congratulate him and officers on the level of capital investment maintained by this council for the benefit of our residents. Spending on play area improvements and War Memorial Skate Park are very welcome. But, and I am loath to highlight a few apparent shortcomings in the report, but that's my job. I understand that costs for refurbishing May Place for homeless people, clearly a very positive decision supported by this council, have risen alarmingly. This report proposes to find an extra £535,000 to finish the job, on top of the original budget of £1.125 million. This is a £146,000, including the acquisition cost doing to ensure it doesn't get any worse. Now, I was pleased to hear you mention the Living Labs project. It's all but done and it's up and running. So I'm just puzzled why we've got a rephasing of £786,000 in this report. So I just wanted to be absolutely certain, has that money been spent or is it to be spent? Because it's important, because this project will deliver significant benefits for Basingstoke and its business community, and I hope by the time that it's finished it is still state of the art. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So, Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mine was a question on section 3.13, where there is some amounts of money set aside, 1.1 million this financial year, 3.8 million next financial year, 2.2 million the financial year following. I presume that includes all the money that's going to be spent on project planning, demolition of Fainham House, but I also note in that paragraph £44 million recently spent on 206,000 square foot of Grade A office space at Grosvenor House. To me, the figures previously mentioned at the top of Para 3.13 don't appear to be enough for a complete redevelopment of the Fainham House site, so I'd like to get a little bit more understanding as to what those figures actually relate to. Does that include building provision on that site? Because I very much doubt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ibrahim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be supporting or voting in favour of this, but I just want to draw the attention of my fellow councillor. Every time we see this report, there seems to be a pattern around underspend, a pattern around, if even you look at it now, almost every single section justify one of the underspend item. It has, however, there is delay in implementation, delay in third-party planning, and I'm conscious whether there's so many delays is related to an issue in the planning cycle, or whether that's a nature margin of delays. We can see that's nearly around 7% underspend. And again, I'm not entirely sure, but hopefully you can enlighten us whether that goes in line with a benchmark across other councillors when it comes to percentage of underspend. Because if not, there is an issue around planning and financial control, and I think this is something just to put out there for everyone. The other aspect I want to say is very interesting. Some of these projects was pushed forward. We tried to make some amendments to the budget for things that our residents need very much so. And there have been pushback from the administration saying, no, we have these are priority, these need to be done this year, now. And we look in the report and seeing them hugely delayed. Some of them might even have to be carried forward for next year. So it's just, again, that's something maybe we need to keep an eye on for the next budget when we try to make our amendments, and we really question some of the budget lines that are put forward by the administration and whether they have that urgency. Because if they have the urgency to be included in that year budget, they have the urgency to be implemented and not delayed, a delay after a delay. Thank you.
Anybody else? I move to Paul. Nothing to say. Okay, Gavin, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you. And to answer some of those questions, to Councillor Isa, yes, I'm always concerned about rising costs. Since having this role, I worry about the rising cost of everything all the time. What I can be certain of is the officers have gone through a robust procurement process throughout, making sure we get best price and best value. Construction costs are up, and actually grant funding from the government is going to fill some of the void that exists in that May Place budget. What we are determining with May Place is, I think historically it's become a warehouse of problems, and we want to turn it as a stepping stone of recovery, so people go there to get well and improve lives rather than just holding on to problems. We're determined to do that, and I think strict cost controls are in place. We're very open and honest about the fact that construction is going to cost slightly more, and therefore we're adding to the budget. In terms of the 5G Living Lab, the phasing of the money, now the money actually will come from, it's actually now Hampshire County Council, but it's LEP money originally, so it's not actually our specific money, so we will make sure we spend it all. So although it's installed, there's lots of testing to do, there's cabling to do. Frankly, I do not understand the whole 5G Living Lab thing, and everyone's tried to explain it to me, so I just, you know, it's LEP's money, let's hope it all works. I seem to have... any time, Councillor Rice, as long as you're paying. Councillor McCormack referred to money for Fanham House. Just to be clear, this money is for Basingview and regeneration of works you may need to do in Basingview. Fanham House demolition would cost hopefully a lot less than that. Obviously, we'll go again out to procurement on that, and it is to demolish and clear the site ready for development. Clearly, if someone to actually rebuild something there would require an investor to come along with tens of millions of pounds. It's not something we can do off the shelf, so we're working with investment partners, and Councillor Cubitt is meeting lots of them and trying to charm money out of them at the moment to try and get things going. Councillor Ibrahim, I'm not aware of you ever moving an amendment to a capital budget. I think you're all getting confused with capital and revenue. But if there's anything you need, please contact me whilst we're now, because we're developing the budget for future years. There's not a lot of capital money there. You can see that in the report. But we're more than happy to listen to ideas that come from anywhere. But it's a lot easier to do it now than it is to do it in February when you tell us on the night. Thank you.
Okay, I think can we move to, is that all agreed? Agreed. Excellent. We'll move on to item 9, which is the, do I need to read this? Do I need to read that bit? Oh, they've agreed it, okay. Right, so let's move on to item 9, which is the Revenue Outturn Report 25-26. So Councillor James is to move it.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the revenue outturn for last financial year. There's sort of 3 steps to go through on this because it's a little bit more complex than normal. So the first stage is to talk about one-offs. As in every financial year, the government tends to send you a flurry of ring-fenced grants, which you get and then find out you can't spend before the end of the financial year. So they'll be listed in there, and they will go into an earmarked reserve, the appropriate earmarked reserve. In addition, the lease surrender fee that was paid by AA to us to evacuate Fanham House effectively, that also came in. That when we set the budget, that wasn't something that we knew were definitely going to happen. It was clearly planned. So that's coming as exceptional money, and that would go into the MTFS. There may yet be some holding costs for the site, depending how quickly we move forward with demolition. So when we get to the actual revenue budget itself against what was planned and what's actually happened, we have got an underspend of about £1.5 million. £580,000 of that are schemes which were possibly complete but hadn't been invoiced at the time that the accounts closed on the 31st of March 26. So they'll be in the carry forward budget to go into next year. Within the revenue budget, there are some challenges, certainly around housing benefits. There is a £600,000 adverse thing there. We're looking into that because that does seem to be a growing and ongoing matter. It relates to the changes to universal credit and housing and the way housing benefit now works within that system rather than going through the council, and some work around temporary accommodation. We're looking into what can be done to mitigate and reduce that as much as possible, and we'll bring that back in due course. Also, we've got the vacancy factor. It's a very confusing time with the LGR on the agenda, whether or not you can have more vacancies as you stop filling them, or whether you have less vacancies as people hang on to see what opportunities may arise. So there is a £450,000 where we had less vacancies than expected. And also household waste, there was an increased cost of £600,000 whilst we're running both systems effectively, collecting black bin and food bin on a weekly basis. But balancing that off, there was a homelessness grant of £1 million, which helped us in terms of what we do, and also extra EPRS, which is basically waste money we get from the government via supermarkets for dealing with all the additional packaging. And also Donald Trump's invasion of Iran seems to have kept interest rates higher, which is actually good for at least somebody, and it's actually us. Although unfortunately all the fuel costs have gone up, but there we go. So we are £1.2 million better off. So that's why we've ended up in a £1.5 million surplus situation. As I say, £600,000 of that will go straight into the reserve that's earmarked for that purpose, because we have no flexibility with government grant money, or the government grant money has come in. The rest of that £930,000 will go into our MTFS risk reserves, because clearly money has come out of that to support waste transition. Also within the revenue is an addition to the revenue budget for this year, and this relates to Basingstoke Town Community Football Club, or particularly the Winkleberry facility. As you all know, the members will know, finding a home of their own for Basingstoke Town Football Club has been a priority for this authority. It's been a challenge to do it in a way that the club can do it in a financial, sustainable way. There's been lots of nonsense online about how we could possibly just build them a sort of £50 million stadium, which we can't do, or how we can suddenly buy back from Camrose, which would need millions of pounds worth of work, and the owner wouldn't want to sell it to us anyway. What we've had to do is find a solution that works for the club, that is sustainable for the club, and doesn't cost the taxpayer any money over the long term. And that's what we think we've achieved through what's now going through legal and obviously being checked over by the football club to make sure they're happy with it. But we do need to create room in the revenue budget in order to complete the transaction. What the football club tell us is that if this is passed, and if they are able to get their legal teams and our legal teams to all agree to it, they will have control of the site. That means they can increase their revenue from advertising, the advertising boards, which they previously shared. They can offer a greater commercial matchday experience and also expand their academy, bringing for the first time equality between women's football and men's football in the academy at Winkleberry. So it is a really exciting time. Having visited the site, it's more of a college than a football club because they've got more students and players, which is obviously a really good thing, but obviously it does help the on-field activities grow as well, so they can expand in the future and have a true home and a long-lasting home. So we'd ask you to approve the addition to the programme. Obviously, it's confidential papers in terms of the details, so if anyone wants to know anything about that, please catch up with me afterwards. More than happy to discuss it confidentially with anybody. But we think we've reached a really good deal for the football club and for the council, and of course for Basingstoke and Dean and its future.
Thank you, Gavin. And just to reiterate, there is the bit in the notes we've got here about the Winkleberry Stadium complex and about the recommendation from the Cabinet meeting held on the 9th of June, which is Cabinet recommends to Council to note that the revenue funding requirements for the surrender of the leases by Hampshire Football Association will be included in the MFTS Update and Revenue Programme outturn updated to Council in July 2026, see section 9.1. So, does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Phillimore.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak. No one would begrudge Basingstoke Town Community Football Club a dedicated home of their own after what they've been through and treated by previous owners. However, I'm concerned about a couple of issues. Firstly, the club is still being financed with loans from previous directors which they seem reticent or can't afford to repay at mutually agreed amounts. These gentlemen stepped up when most needed to accelerate a return to the town and to Winkleberry. Secondly, a club that was originally set up by its supporters to run for its supporters now has apparently set up a separate limited company to run in tandem for reasons beknown only to them. Before we commit taxpayers' funds to this much needed project, are we happy with the transparency and cooperation offered by the club, or is it actually none of our business?
Councillor Isaac.
last share. Thank you. And that's about the overspend of £70,000 incurred by this council and its officers on credit card payments. I understand that this arises from an increase in the number of transactions and also the per transaction charge made by Capita and credit card companies. With residents already facing pressure on council tax, can he explain why we paid Capita, and their shareholders no doubt, and the credit card companies £193,000 for card processing last year, and what is being done to cut these costs? For instance, I might suggest renegotiating the contract or offering more low-cost payment options like direct debit. Thank you.
Councillor Mina-Spound.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you would expect, I had something pre-prepared, but I just wanted to reinforce the very important points that Councillor Phillimore pointed out to this council. There is something about this cycle that we have been through before that we want to make sure does not happen again. I am pleased, however, to support the recommendation that is specifically around the Winklebury Football Complex. I was lucky enough to be the sports and leisure portfolio holder in 2019 when I was approached by both Hampshire Football Association and Basingstoke Town Community Football Club, as it was the Football Club Limited then, to explore precisely this kind of arrangement. Hampshire FA wanted to reduce its presence in Basingstoke, get out, go south, and at that stage was looking to hand the head lease over to the football club. There are, unfortunately, as many will know in this chamber, but particularly Councillor Phillimore, many people in this borough that unfortunately have an investment that is incredibly unhealthy in rewriting the history of Basingstoke Town Football Club and the circumstances that left it without a permanent home. But tonight should be about looking forward. 7 years after those original discussions, this council now has the opportunity to help secure the club a permanent home of its own. This is a brilliant possibility. That would be a significant and positive step for the club, its supporters and the wider community. I wholeheartedly support the recommendation and hope we can now bring this long-running issue to a successful conclusion. Because, Madam Mayor, as I think we all spotted, England may not have been able to bring football home, but this council can.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, so any other speakers? I haven't got any names down. No, Angie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too just wanted to chip in on the Winklebury Stadium complex. I mean, I do think it's very good news for the club and it's very welcome. The new clubhouse have actually been outstanding in community sport. Over the heat wave, they opened up the clubhouse free of charge to any members of the community that needed to go in and use their air-conditioned space. They've been fantastic. So I wholeheartedly support this. The only thing I would say is, can we please make sure that something better happens with the parking arrangements, because parking is still something on match days that my residents nag me about all the time. But apart from the parking, this is brilliant news for Winklebury and for the football club.
Thank you, Angie. Anyone else? Paul, to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I just say the decision tonight in terms of Basingstoke Town Football Club is really about the security that they've been looking for, as we've all been saying. So it is really good that we can offer them that. There are always going to be critics, I get that. There are always going to be people who miss the prize when it's in front of them. But I wish the club really well in recognising the step forward this is for them. No one, as has been said tonight, can right the wrongs of the past. We're not going to rewrite history. But what we can do positively is to support the club into its new future. Now, it's interesting because when we came into office in 2023, we inherited quite a list of projects that we needed to be delivered or needed to be fixed, and we've delivered on many of them so far. We supported the sale of Festival Place, and Sama have come in, and they've done us proud. So footfall in the town centre is now at record levels, and we're seeing new shops open all the time. That's 21 new leases that are currently under discussion. We've enabled the refurbishment of the ice rink, and the Bison are back. We kept ice in Basingstoke. We got the Many Down deal done. and now we're seeing the infrastructure delivered on many now. We've just signed the contracts for a brand new leisure complex, again a decision that's been made and delivered. And so now with this decision, we can ensure that BTCFC joins that list with a home of their own, and it's just the beginning for them. And I think it's important to say thank you to Hampshire FA for all their support and cooperation, and we are looking forward to working with them on new projects in our borough, and we look forward to their continuing relationship, not only with the football club, but with sport in our borough. We have delivered on this project, and it is really important to say that there are matters still to conclude, not least the commitments the club have to honour, but we will work with them on that to ensure that they do, to ensure that that happens. But this is a really positive step forward. We want them to be successful, grow and develop, and we are looking forward to our partnership and what it can mean for our town. And Angie, I would just say completely agree on the parking, and that's definitely on the agenda, and we need to have a good conversation about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So, Councillor James, do you wish to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you everyone for those comments. Obviously, Councillor Phillimore, private arrangements between investors and a club are very difficult for the council to get into. We do, of course, expect the club to act in a with the high moral standards and an ethical way as they're tenants of us. What I would say is, from speaking to the club and speaking to their Gavin equivalent, that once they're in a position where they can open the bar more often, because the FA put a lot of restrictions on how often they can open the bar, how often they can open the club, where beer can be consumed, what food they can sell. They have got ambitious plans which will generate a lot more revenue, and then some of those outstanding loans, which may have seemed very large to the club at the time, will become more achievable. So I do hope the club will honour any outstanding debts they have in the best way possible. In terms of card payments, Councillor Isa, I can't give you an answer. I'm no expert on card payments, but I'll consult my wife. She certainly is. And I'll come back to you. I think I'll have to forget the detail on that one. For Councillor Freeman, I'm glad that Winkelbury remains very supportive of the football club. They enjoy being there, and I think the clubhouse will be incredibly useful, seeing as you seem to be suffering a major evacuation of pubs at the moment. So you'll at least have some sort of social gathering area with alcohol involved, so that'll be a good sign. And the parking is something we're working on. The club are supposed to park around at the leisure centre and walk through, or the leisure park and walk through. I thought the parking was generally a Sunday thing where cycle lanes become a car park. And I'm glad you didn't mention the drummer, who we will try and get to pipe down after 9 o'clock in the evening when they're playing on a school night.
Madam Mayor, if I just might beg your indulgence, it has just been pointed out to me that while the England men didn't bring it home, the Lionesses certainly did.
Okay, is that agreed? Thank you. Right, moving on to item 10, which is the Treasury Management 2025-26 Annual Report. I'll move this. Deputy to second. Does anyone wish to speak? John.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I see from the Treasury Management report that a £10 million loan has been made to Rushmore Council last month by this council. This loan, I'm informed, will be formally reported in the next Treasury Management report to Audit and Accounts Committee. No doubt this is a fraternal gesture of help to our partners-to-be in the future North Hampshire Unitary. I'm assured by officers that the loan is on appropriate market terms, and there will be no financial accounting complications or risks of loss to this council as part of the formation of the new Unitary Council on the 1st of April 2028. The Basingstoke investment, if you like, asset, and Rushmore loan liability will effectively net down to zero when the balance sheets are brought together. Let us hope so. If local government reorganisation does not happen, then Basingstoke is covered by the loan agreement that is in place, and Basingstoke would be repaid by Rushmore on the 3rd of April. I thought it was worth highlighting this point to councillors tonight and to the public generally, but that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Well highlighted. I think so. Other than that comment, which I think obviously we'll look at audit and accounts and things, is that agreed? Okay, moving on to item 11, Old Basing and Lichpit Community Governance Review, final recommendations. I move this. Deputy Mayor will second. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Tuck.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say I was until recently an Old Basing Lichpit Parish Councillor. I wanted to thank all the parish councillors across our borough for the hard work they do in a voluntary capacity. This is an important next stage. I think it's important to understand that the parish has very different character areas, and whilst I tried very hard to represent all of them, I hope that future parish councillors will be mindful that they are very different indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so anybody else? Okay. Oh, yes, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only reason I'm speaking is this parish is within our county division, and it's been discussed at the county level, the whole business about LGR. And I have also said at the county that parish councils are important. And in the future, when we have the combined authority, we're not quite sure how much power parishes will get, but they are the voice of and the ears that the people can talk to. And it's very important. And this consolidation that's happened in Old Basing is very good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else? Okay, so is that agreed? Agreed, lovely. Moving on to item 12, which is the appointment of the interim section 151 officer. I'll move this and the Deputy Mayor will second. Does anyone wish to speak on this? Is that agreed? Agreed. Lovely. Item 13, Audit and Accounts Committee Annual Report 2025 to 2026. I'll move this and Sajish will second. Does anyone wish to speak? Okay. And Councillor Phillimore obviously is the chair, I've been told to make a point of.
Does he want to
Do you wish to say anything? Just in case you'd forgotten. Is that agreed then? Agreed. Item 14 is the Standards Committee Annual Report. I'll be moving this and Sajish will be seconding. To note again, Councillor Slimming was the Vice Chair, and does anyone wish to speak? So is that agreed? Lovely. Always is good, isn't it? Look at this. Item 15, Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report 2025-2026. I'll be moving this and Sajish will second. And does anyone wish to speak on this one? Okay, are we agreed? Agreed, lovely. And item 16, here we go. So the first motion we have tonight, protecting South Ham and Buckskin residents from compulsory purchase and ensuring full democratic accountability. A very nice short title. So I'm going to call on Councillor Dillimore, who is proposing this. Dillo, so what do I call him? Dillimore. I'm just going to make people's names up now. Sorry, Councillor Dillo, Sean.
That's fine.
And Councillor Elliott, you will be seconding. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
Speak now.
Speak now, okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Dillo.
I've been called a lot of things, Madam Mayor, so... thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. I wish I didn't actually have to bring this motion regarding CPOs before Council today. I would much rather that the residents of Buckskin and South Ham had already been given the certainty they deserve. But more than a year after I first raised this issue through a question on notice at full Council, many families, I'm afraid, are still living with the uncertainty about their future. This motion is about the people we are all elected to represent. So when I raised my question on notice in May last year, it was after speaking with residents who were frightened about what the regeneration proposals could mean for them, their families and the homes they had worked so hard to build. Many described feeling trapped in limbo. They weren't simply worried about compulsory purchase orders. They were worried because nobody could tell them what the future might hold. The leader responded honestly, and Paul, I thank you for that. He explained that in over 20 years on the council, he could not recall these powers being used in this way, and that any use would require an exceptionally strong case in the public interest. But the council could not legally rule out receiving a request to consider compulsory purchase orders. That was a fair and legally accurate answer. But it didn't answer the questions that residents are still really asking. What does this mean for me? Will I lose my home? Will I still be able to live in the community where I've spent my life? So a year later, those questions still remain. So over the past 12 months, together with my ward colleagues, Councillor Val Elliott, Richard Court, County Councillor Stephen Reid, and all the councillors representing Southam as well, we have continued listening to residents, attending engagement events, scrutinising proposals, and standing alongside people whose lives have effectively been placed on hold. Many residents support investment in their communities, but no one should have to spend years wondering whether they will lose the home they love. That is why this motion matters. It is built around one simple but fundamental principle, which is equivalence. Equivalence isn't measured by the value of a house, it is measured by whether a family can continue living the life they have built. It means that no residents should ever be worse off because of regeneration, either financially or emotionally. It means recognising that a house is a home. It is a neighbour who checks in on you, and it is the school your children attend. If regeneration is to happen, residents deserve the reassurance that they will have the opportunity to remain within their community in a genuinely equivalent home and continue living the lives they have created. This motion supports regeneration that is fair. It asks this council to provide certainty wherever it can, to make clear that compulsory purchase should only ever be considered as an absolute last resort, and to ask the government to strengthen the law so that no resident is left worse off because of regeneration. So I hope every member will see this motion for what it truly is. It's not politics. It's simply councillors doing what residents expect us to do, standing together to protect the people we represent. And I commend this motion to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. So we move to Val. I believe this is Val's maiden speech, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am proud to second this motion and to stand alongside Councillor Dillow on behalf of the residents of Buckskin and my fellow councillors for Southam. Over the past 6 months, at public engagement events and on doorsteps across the ward, I have heard the same worry raised again and again. Residents ask gently but insistently, what does this mean for me? Should I go ahead with the loft conversion my teenage son needs, the new bathroom for my growing family, or even something as simple as redecorating or putting up a new fence? And if the worst happens, if my husband of 60 years dies, how am I going to afford another home within reach of my family and friends? These aren't abstract planning questions to the people asking them. They are questions about the shapes of their lives. Councillor Dillow put it well. A home is far more than bricks and mortar. It represents decades of hard work, of saving and sacrifice, of family memories built room by room. To disrupt that would be a failure of the trust residents place in us. And this is why this motion insists that compulsory purchase must remain a genuine last resort, never a routine tool. And that's why equivalence sits at the heart of this motion. It is, above all, a promise that no one will be made worse off. It is the reassurance of a future home here in Basingstoke, close to friends who look out for them, the shops they rely on, the networks that make the place feel like home, with the same type of outdoor space they've nurtured and enjoyed, even if the address has to change. It is simply a statement that the people we represent deserve fairness and control over their own futures. This motion gives homeowners back that control. Nobody's going to force them out of their home. The reassurance that this will not be done to them, and that after years of sacrifice, they will never be forced to settle for second best. I believe every member of this council wants the same things for our residents, for them to feel secure, respected, and above all, heard. I second the motion, and I hope this council can speak with one voice tonight. Thank you.
Right, okay, I have a few speakers, so Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What genuinely drives this council is the concerns of the residents we represent. And I think this motion regarding CPOs restates what we've already said, clearly and publicly. CPO powers are legally a last resort. And beyond that, we must believe they must only ever be considered when it is demonstrably in the public interest. Now, I said that in the Gazette on the 11th of April 2025 and in this chamber of the same year, in May of that year, and this position has not changed. On writing to the government, I'm going to suggest that we hold fire for now. Andy Burnham will be the Prime Minister soon enough, and then we'll have a brand new MHCLG team to deal with, and I suggest we wait to find out who's going to be in the post, and then we address the letter appropriately. Let me say what regeneration should actually mean. And this is really important. It starts with people, not bricks and mortar. It begins by understanding a community, by listening to it, hearing its voice. Good regeneration respects what a community already has and what it lacks. It builds on the ideas, the character, the aspirations of the people who lived there and harnesses that hope into what is proposed as new. Successful regeneration empowers local people to shape their place, binding the old with the new in a way that genuinely reflects the community's character, and it must take people with it. It can never be done to people, it can never antagonise or alienate them, and it can never be a tick box exercise. It has to have far deeper meaning than that. These are our principles, and we have seen them deliver real change in this borough, in other communities across many years. Which is why, if I'm honest, the level of anxiety we're debating tonight is a concern, and it tells me those principles have not been sufficiently followed in this process thus far. Residents shouldn't be sitting at home uncertain about the future of their homes, and that uncertainty isn't acceptable. SNG must do better. The responsibility isn't simply to consult, but to genuinely reassure and to engage with all residents as equal stakeholders. And these principles are not optional, they're not nice to haves. These are what we expect our partners to deliver. So much of what the motion calls for is already our policy. Voluntary participation, community confidence, genuine partnership, ensuring no one is left worse off. There is, however, one small irony I can't let pass. The motion argues that the decisions of this magnitude should not be left to the small executive body, and then resolves to ask the Cabinet to act on almost every point. You can't simultaneously distrust the executive and then ask us to deliver the resolves. On scrutiny, and this is really important, overview and scrutiny committees scrutinise and make recommendations. They don't determine executive decisions. And that's a legal point, not a political one. So we shouldn't raise expectations that the law doesn't permit. We shouldn't unpack individual cases in scrutiny committees. We would not want individual CPO cases to go to committee, but we can discuss the principles, we can discuss the themes that we should deliver, but the actual cases should not go to scrutiny. They need to be dealt with in an appropriate process that respects GDPR. On equivalence, The idea that a displaced homeowner should be able to afford a genuinely comparable home in the same community and not just receive market value, but maintain their place in it, goes beyond current legislation. That's a legitimate and important argument, and one worth putting to the government. The law needs to change. So I'll be supporting the motion, not because it breaks new ground, but because it gives us clarity and it enables us to restate without ambiguity where we stand. SNG have got to be better if they want the regeneration to move forward with residents, and it can only move forward with residents' confidence. And there are 3 changes to the law that would help around equivalence, as has already been mentioned. Also, levers of accountability over housing associations. We used to have them, and they were removed. They were removed by other governments. The new government, this government, needs to listen carefully about local authorities asking for levers of accountability over housing associations. And we also should have resident voice within the process legislated for. So I should be asking Luke Murphy as our MP to help advocate for those particular issues, because it's not just about equivalence and it's not just about who is accountable for this project. This is SNG's regeneration project. But as a local council, we can do our best to support our residents and ask for the levers of government to come to local government in order that we can have more say and more control and represent our residents effectively.
Okay, Councillor Bound.
I read this motion with quite a lot of interest when I received my papers. And I read it through and I couldn't make head nor tail of it, to be honest with you. I thought the wording of it was somewhat obscure. I could see that what the proposer of the motion was trying to intimate, in that he didn't feel that the compulsory purchase element that would be within the scheme presented by, was it SNG, was sufficiently watertight for his residents. And I can understand the residents' concerns in this respect, as the Leader of the Council has just mentioned. But the wording of the motion, for me, does not at all cover what has been spoken about tonight. It's ambivalent. And in terms of what's being mentioned, for instance, I looked up on the government website today about what's it called? The right of equivalence. And it's quite clear in the legislation. HMG Compulsory Purchase and Compensation Guide 1 Procedure, and it's published in December 21. The overriding principle of compulsory purchase is equivalence. Now, whether that means that somebody gets an exact same build, or what they left and come back to, hopefully, I have no idea. That will be very difficult to bring about through this motion or through anything SNG could promise. I don't feel that the motion speaks to the people of Buckskin and South Ham. It talks about providing clarity and reassurance. I'm afraid if I was a person living in Buckskin or South Ham, I wouldn't feel reassured by this motion whatsoever. It would put the wind up me, to be quite honest. So no, I can't support the motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I get the technicalities that Councillor Harvey was talking about and Councillor Bound just mentioned, but I'm happy to support this motion because at its heart, it's not about planning policy or regeneration strategies or council processes. It's about people. And it's about families who have worked hard for decades to buy, live and maintain their homes and who deserve certainty about their future. Over the recent months, I've had the opportunity to meet some of the residents along with Councillor Dillo and Councillor Elliott, and many have shared their worries about what generation could mean for them and their families. As Councillor Elliott mentioned, for many, this is not just about the bricks and mortar. It's about the home where they have raised their children, cared for loved ones, and built their lives. So the uncertainty itself is causing real distress. People are putting important decisions on hold, like Councillor Elliott mentioned, because they simply do not know what the future holds. This is not fair on residents who have invested so much in their communities for decades. Regeneration can and should improve lives, but it must happen with residents, not to them. Compulsory purchases should only ever be the last resort in the most exceptional circumstances, not a routine approach. So I completely agree with Councillor Harvey that SNG must do better than what they are communicating to their residents and wider audience. I also support the call for full democratic accountability. Decisions that could affect people's homes and future deserve open debate and proper scrutiny by elected councillors, like we have set up the scrutiny committee. Most importantly, residents reserve assurances. We don't want more uncertainty, especially around this climate around the country. They deserve to know that their voice matters, their homes are valued, and that this council will always put people before processes. For those reasons, I'm pleased to support this motion and hope everybody can get on board with Councillor Dillo and Elliott. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say the two speeches that were proposing and seconded this motion were of the highest quality, and I think very agreeable, and there's nothing I could disagree with what was said by Councillor Dillo, and I'll go on terrible with you names, Val, I know it's Val, but that's Councillor Elliott. So they were fantastic speeches and probably worded slightly better than the motion. You could have just printed them, and that would have been a lot easier to support. So I have no problem with the principle of the motion. I can't offer reassurance, as we mentioned earlier, this is all about legislation. The compulsory purchase order process. We don't make the decision, we just make the decision to refer it up to the Secretary of State, who actually makes a decision. Some reassurance I can offer, though, is I had a quick look, because all the applications are recorded on the website. On average, per year, across the whole country, there are 10 referrals to the Secretary of State for compulsory purchase orders, and on average, 5 a year are granted. So if you think of 50 million properties and 5 being granted, and you break that down, you can see the risk is much lower. Of course, I totally accept there is a risk that someone on South Ham is going to be in that 0.0001%, and that doesn't make their life any easier. So I do hope that the South Ham regeneration can progress very quickly to its master plan, so that people know whether they're in the flight path or at risk. But as has been mentioned, that the risk is actually reduced by the fact that they have to demonstrate, the applicant has to demonstrate that there is no other way of doing it. I totally agree with Councillor Harvey's point. It's not something you could have a conversation in a public scrutiny committee meeting, but I would hope that if an application came in, there'd be an opportunity to discuss with the ward members and seek their views and input into the final decision being made. I think that's important to do, whether you're speaking for them, the public, or whatever. So I think there's a very little chance of it happening, but if it does happen, I think we need to be aware. And when we get the council resolves, I have a few issues here. First of all, writing to government to review. Does anyone know when the last review of the guidance was done on compulsory purchase orders? 23 working days ago. So I'm not sure the government, I mean, they may U-turn on, that's what they normally do, but I doubt the government wants to particularly review that guidance, but maybe we should take that guidance to committee to be looked at. The other thing is to state clearly that this council does not support the use of compulsory purchase orders. Now, in principle, I don't. But I want you to imagine, and please take this as I know less about the regeneration of South Ham, because it's not a cabinet decision, it's not a leader for property cabinet, whatever decision. South Ham committee will know more than we do, and we'll only know when they know because we'll read the same papers. So just to give an example, we could get to a place where the master plan is finally produced, and in the heart of the new South Ham community is a new West Side community centre, built to the highest standards, to specifications outlined in Councillor Mackay's policy. But there's a problem. It's one house in the way, and they won't move. Now, we'll consult with ward members, and you'll help us make a decision whether that community centre is essential, or whether or not community space is essential, but the size of the hall isn't, and actually the residents more important. Because these decisions are never easy. So it's very difficult to state clearly that we do not support, because we may be making that decision. I'm guessing, way the master plan's going, that decision probably won't be made by this administration, but by the North Hampshire administration, of which anyone in this room might be part. So it will be a case of these decisions aren't as easy. So I'm happy to support it going through, but when it gets to Cabinet, we'll have to check and think very carefully about what is legally possible, what is actually deliverable, because I don't think it's right to raise any more false hope for the residents of Southam and Buckskin. They deserve absolute honesty, and we have to give them the truth, what we can control, what we can't control. And it may be there is a compulsory purchase order, and it may be something that this council ends up supporting.
Councillor Trump.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's get to the cut of what this is about. This is all about trust. And that's a commodity in short supply in relation to the regeneration programme. Councillor James, you just referenced the master plan, this mystical beast which simply does not exist as far as inquiries that I have made and others in relation to SNG. That they claim that it does not exist seems bizarre, bearing in mind this is a project to cut 2 kilometres straight through one of our communities, or 2 of our communities in effect, demolishing houses on the way and rebuilding them. How do you get that level of financing? How are you able to plan what you're going to do if you do not have a master plan? It defies logic. I cannot see that it is the case. Under questioning by the chair of the Regeneration Committee, they did admit that the master plan will be made available sometime later this year, after apparently the time when they're looking to stick in the Pinkerton Road plans, which are still kind of in the mix, and we can go back to that. But be in no doubt, this is a well-thumbed copy of the guidelines as to how this CPO process works. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an expert, but I've read it a lot. There are things in here which are fascinating, and we have to understand, every one of us elected representatives, that we are the acquiring authority. We have to face the constituents when we're telling them that their house or their accommodation is about to go bye-bye. And that's not something that I fancy doing. The hurdle that we need to jump to justify such a huge step needs considerable and deep thought. And as I say, I for one would not be happy to have that conversation with people. There are cameras in this room, and this is a recording, and they're going to be able to see how we vote and how we support them at this very difficult time. I would caution the members of our constituents to look at the guidelines. Point 2.7 states, where acquiring authorities secure the acquisition of land by agreement, they may pay compensation as if it had been compulsorily purchased, unless the property is already on the market. That is something that indicates, with regard to Councillor James, that more than the value can be paid to somebody who is being under threat of compulsory purchase in order to facilitate that move and to give an encouragement to help the process along. There's an issue also that I want to raise, which is Rule 136 of the 2003 Land Registry Rules, which can allow privatisation in respect redaction of the prices paid for homes on the commercial interest argument. Inquiries of SNG by myself has led to an assertion that they are not using Rule 136, but there is a substantial gap between the publishing of the information about prices and acquisitions on the land registry which means there is a substantial delay between the public having access to that information and the individuals that are on SNG knowing what they've already paid. That effectively would put our constituents potentially at a disadvantage.
Steve, you've got about 30 seconds left.
Let's cut to something which should make a few of you smile. I, as a Reform Council, am now going to reference the European Court of Human Rights. Right, thank you. Article 1, Protocol 1 and Article 8. These are protections under the European Court of Human Rights. And I am making no excuses for using that legislation. I will use whatever tools are made available to me to protect my constituents, full stop.
Thank you, Steve. You're going to have to...
We will use it.
Yeah,
thank you, Mum.
Thank you. I've been informed we've actually run out of debate time, but I do have two more speakers, and I personally think it's quite important, this topic. Exactly. So, oh, sorry, I've got three more speakers. Yes, so I've got Gary, Andy, and Zander. So I am minded to consider waiving standing orders on that to allow those, but I would ask that you try and keep your words brief, with, if that's, and try not to make sure you don't repeat things that have already been said. Is everyone reasonable thinks that's reasonable? Yes. Good. Okay, lovely. Thank you. So let's go on to Councillor Gary Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do support this motion. He's not off. Oh, Steve.
Schoolboy error. Terribly sorry. Terribly sorry, Steve. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do support this motion. I've been knocking around this place for nearly 30 years now. I can't remember a compulsory purchase actually coming to this council, so I think it's right that this motion seeks for a clarification of the way this council deals with compulsory purchase. As Councillor Harvey has stated, I mean, it is the last resort is our policy, but I'd like to see it there in black and white. So I want to go on about what the pain and their suffering the residents of Southam and Buckskin have had, but since this since this regeneration proposal came 18 months ago, they're all still in limbo and their lives are on hold. You go and speak to them on the doorstep, you go to these events, there's real anger out there, there's real actually hatred there towards SNG, what have they done to the Southam and Buckskin communities. Their lives have been put on hold. And they've come up with a compensation package which is basically statutory. We've all been involved in redundancies, and the better employers give you more than statutory, and I think SNG's be pushing the boat out and giving much more than the statutory requirements. So I don't want to go on, as councillors have already said, but SNG need to get on with their master plan. They need to produce it as quick as possible so we could end this uncertainty in Southam and Buckskin and people could get back on with their lives. Thank you.
Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm a veteran of previous regeneration projects. In my previous stint in public office representing Popley, we had two schemes. They were both successfully executed, and the reason why they were successfully executed was because we brought the residents with us. They wanted the regeneration, they accepted the proposals. We demolished two pubs as part of that, and they voluntarily surrendered their leases. I see CPO as a last resort. We didn't need it in the Popley regeneration. We shied away from it in the Winklebury regeneration. That was seriously talked about in terms of trying to resolve the issues with the derelict Three Barrels pub, and I understand that the Headley C has since come to the table wanting to be a part of the regeneration proposals, having realised after several years that he's not going to get anything holding out on his own. But I think it's really important that that, as a last resort, should still be on the table, because there will be cases like we nearly had in Winkery where we will want to execute that right. Normally, I would expect that against the overwhelming residential support of it. And that's really what the nub of this is. These proposals, the uncertainty has really scared residents. They don't know whether they should sell their house, what sort of value they'll get for it if they do. They don't know whether to invest in their houses. They don't know how long they're going to live. They don't know where they're going to move to. There's a whole load of really huge life-changing aspects of this. And this motion, I'm inclined to support it, but I think there's a number of things here that are kind of like beating around the bush a bit and not really hitting it right bang in the bullseye of the target. And that is this: residential ballot. We should have a vote amongst the Southam residents in favour of regeneration with clear proposals. They can see what they are. And that happens in other parts of the country, like London, for instance, where the GLA is involved with 150 plus houses in a scheme. So I would crave the indulgence of the proposer and seconder if they would like to include that in this motion. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sanderwest.
Hi. So this, I don't want to cover ground that's already been covered, but the motion, I can vote for it today because of how it currently stands. There is, all this does is restate how the CPO process works for this council, as we've had in previous policy announcements. This is how the CPO process works pretty much across the country as a last resort. It's not something we intend to just run around and do. Everyone's already covered that in detail. The other reason I can vote for this motion today is because of the values in it I think it's seemingly across the chamber shared values that we all have for our residents. But this doesn't actually give Southam and Buckskin residents any more certainty than they already had a few months ago. This motion doesn't achieve that stated aim. Because it does just restate facts that are already in existence. The only people who can offer certainty, because it's not in our council's gift, the only people who can offer certainty are SNG. They failed to do that several months ago. They've lost the trust of people in failing to do that well. Now is their opportunity, and over the next several months will be their opportunity to fix that and give people certainty. It's not in our gift to give, but hopefully we can continue to hold them to account to give it to the residents of Southam and Buckskin.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, Sean, if you'd like to sum up. And there wasn't anybody else, was there? No. Okay, Sean, if you'd like to sum up, please.
Just regarding the amendment that Councillor McCormack, I'm not inclined to accept that on this occasion. I think historically voting receives a small turnout, so you wouldn't get a fair representation of the whole community. So I think I'd rather keep the motion as it is. So in summing up, I would like to thank every member who has contributed. I'm particularly grateful to the leader of the council for indicating his support for the principles behind this motion. I also agree that it is sensible to wait until the new minister has been appointed before making any representations to government. We just need to wait till they get the deck chairs moved around a little bit. But I do hope tonight has demonstrated that this issue rises above politics. Tonight has been about residents who simply want to know that whatever happens in the future, they won't be abandoned, left worse off or forced away from the communities they love. That is why the principle of equivalence matters so much. No resident should ever be worse off because of regeneration, either financially or emotionally. So tonight we have an opportunity to give something back to those residents. We can tell them that we have listened, and we can tell them that this council will do everything that is reasonably within its power to protect their interests. and the communities that we all cherish. So I therefore ask every member of this council, regardless of political affiliation, to support this motion. Let's send a clear message to the residents of Buckskin that I represent with my councillor colleagues here, and also Southam, when it comes to protecting our communities, that this council can stand together with one voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Right, so now we can put it to the vote. Would you like a recorded vote? Okay. So, right.
And that's it. You've done it. That's it. You can get the same for green.
I believe the motion is carried. Well done. Right, we'll move on quickly to item 17, which is a second motion, which is about increasing biodiversity net gain through the local plan. Councillor Ganesh will be moving it. Councillor Muniz to second it. Would you like to reserve your right, Simon? Okay. And just to make sure everybody is aware, there are some amendments to the motion that have been put through. So, Councillor Ganesh, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased to move this motion to the Chamber today, along with the amendments marked printed in red in the updated paper. Those were the amendments suggested by Councillor Kevin Chapman. Thank you so much for your phone calls and emails and getting those through to this point. At this full council meeting on 18th July 2019, well before COVID and well before our time, my time as a councillor, this council declared a climate emergency, recognising the urgent need to reduce carbon emissions and embed climate consideration into decision making. On 14th October 2021, the full council unanimously declared an ecological emergency, acknowledging that biodiversity loss is an equally significant challenge requiring action to protect and restore habitats across the borough. Those declarations were not just symbolic, they were commitments into action. Since then, we have adopted our climate change and air quality strategy, net zero strategy, and biodiversity strategy, demonstrating our commitment to ensuring that sustainable growth and nature recovery can go hand in hand. Today, we have an opportunity to build on those commitments through our emerging local plan. The Environment Act 2021 introduced mandatory minimum biodiversity net gain requirements of 10% for most developments. That was an important step forward, but it is exactly that, a minimum standard. National planning guidance allows local planning authorities to consider higher biodiversity net gain requirements through their local plan, where supported by robust ecological evidence, viability assessments, and national planning policy. Our borough is home to North Hampshire's internationally important chalk stream catchments, together with priority habitats and ecological networks. These globally rare environments face increasing pressure from development, water abstraction, pollution, and climate change. Once damaged, they are exceptionally difficult to restore. We may never see them again. At the same time, the government has proposed changes to national planning policy that could restrict when councils can require biodiversity net gain above the statutory minimum. If adopted, which is most likely, it will be even more important that we establish a strong evidence base through our local plan to protect our most environmentally sensitive areas. So This motion is therefore timely, measured and proportionate. It does not seek to stop development. It does not ignore viability and national planning policy. And it does not predetermine the outcome of the local plan. Instead, it asks the Cabinet Member for Strategic Planning and Infrastructure to request officers to prepare the evidence, undertake viability assessments and consult on whether our local plan should include a more ambitious biodiversity net gain policy. This work would be carried out with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, Natural England, Natural Basingstoke and other relevant stakeholders to ensure any future policy is practical, deliverable and evidence-led. If the evidence shows that a higher biodiversity net gain requirement is justified for qualifying developments, particularly in environmentally sensitive locations such as our two stream catchments, then our local plan should have the opportunity to reflect that. Members, this motion is about ensuring that development leaves our borough in a better environmental condition than it found it. It builds on commitments this council has already made. Respect the local plan process and support sustainable growth alongside nature recovery. I hope members from every political group can support in principle. I therefore ask the council to support this motion and enable our emerging local plan to develop and consult upon an evidence-based biodiversity net gain policy that goes beyond statutory 10% minimum. With a target of up to 20%, we are justified by ecological evidence, viability assessments and national planning policy. By supporting this motion today, we will take another practical step towards protecting the natural environment that makes Basingstoke and Dean such a special place while ensuring future generations inherit a borough that is greener, more resilient and richer in nature. So I commend the motion to this council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, so Simon's reserved his right to speak, and so I go to Chris Tomlin. Please, Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank Councillor Ganesh for bringing this motion forward. So there's no doubt in my mind that we should support this. In the UK, we have lost 70% or over of our biodiversity. All our rivers are virtually open sewers. So this council needs to embrace our declared ecological emergency by any means available. So BNG, as we've heard, was introduced in 2021 Environment Act. It is a complicated metric and understanding all the legislation, but it is simply an approach to development designed to leave the natural environment in a measurably better state than beforehand. And as we've heard, the minimum was 10%. It became a mandatory requirement for most developments in 2024. The mandatory framework includes a biodiversity gain hierarchy, where development must secure gains first on-site, then off-site, and if neither possible, purchase of government statutory credits as a last resort. Off-site and significant on-site BNG has to be secured and monitored over a minimum period of 30 years. So for off-site BNG, a developer can deliver on their own land or via purchase of biodiversity credits from a habitat bank. A developer is not legally required to deliver his off-site BNG within the same local authority area. If they have no land within the borough and there's no availability from habitat banks in the borough, the developer will have to seek this outside of the borough. I very much want this in our borough, otherwise it seems rather pointless. Now, what we've done so far, we've published our biodiversity strategy. There are three actions already in this, there are already actions in this plan considering to set a more locally ambitious BNG target. We've been working on this for the last 3 years. The actions, if you want to look at the strategy, are PL1 and PL8. Our borough-produced biodiversity report in March 2026 shows that we have already achieved more than 20.24 percentage net gain on our eligible developments between February 2024 and December 2025. This is the first year we've had to report on it. So it's more's coming by the very fact that developers have been able to achieve it.
And as the motion reminds us, we did commission a biodiversity audit by the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Trust in 2024. So it doesn't set out a locally based case for a higher BNG target. However, it does recognise that the borough has a wealth of biodiversity, and it sets out various pressures that affect nature, development, agriculture, air, water pollution, and recommends an approach that investigates whether developments over a certain size should achieve a 20% gain. We are working with our partners in the borough to set up habitat banks that we can use this BNG credits, if necessary, within Basingstoke and Deane. So for an example, yesterday I actually met with the developer of the Bramley solar farm. So it's a solar farm, it's interesting. They have put in somewhere in the region of 6 kilometres of hedging, or will be. They therefore didn't actually, by their date they put in their application, be subject to BNG. But they had checked it on their metric and they get 100% for doing that. Then 30% on their calculations for what they're doing on the rest of the site. So BNG is so site dependent. So if a higher target is to be sought, a thorough evidence base will be required to form a solid justification, along with viability assessing to demonstrate it is required and deliverable to get through examination. So therefore we should not write to the government until we have a strong argument, and then it will only be likely on a site-by-site basis when we've done the analysis. So the forthcoming new MPPF is likely, unfortunately, to require higher housing targets as opposed to any blanket uplift of BNG, and it's likely to push the demands for housing over nature, sadly. Other local planning authorities with higher targets in their policies, from our research, have been developed under older policies, whereas we've learnt that this borough will have to do this under the new, more stringent and limiting system that the government is proposing. So finally, the E&I committee, of which the proposer is a member, has already set up a biodiversity task and finish group, which has, in part, in its terms of reference, an increased BNG target as a discussion topic, which can explore the issue in more detail. So members, hopefully you will understand we are on the case already. And if members would like to understand this topic in greater detail, then I'm very happy to arrange member briefings. With previous briefings, unfortunately, were poorly attended. My door is always open as the portfolio holder. So let's talk rather than chasing motions like this that seek to parallel activities that are already underway. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Tuck.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the ambition behind this motion. It's always disappointing when a minimum seems to become a target. Personally, I started from the position that 40% BNG should be a breeze. We know our chalk streams are globally rare habitats of exceptional ecological value. Their importance is such that I worked with the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, who commissioned legal advice to explore the case for UNESCO World Heritage status for England's chalk streams. And the UNESCO bill will be tabled on October the 16th. However, in light of the proposed MPPF changes, we should be cautious about focusing on a specific blanket figure such as 20%. Current proposals suggest that BNG requirements above the statutory 10% will need to be justified on specific site allocations rather than applied across the borough. For that reason, the most important part of this motion is not the percentage itself, but the commitment to undertake the evidence, viability and policy work needed to establish what level of enhancement can be justified and defended through the local plan process. And that work I strongly support. The growing emphasis on local nature recovery strategies also strengthens the case for this work. Enhanced BNG should be used to deliver identified priorities such as chalk stream recovery, habitat, connectivity and strategic nature recovery, rather than simply pursuing a higher percentage for its own sake. We should also recognise that, as we work towards a new local plan, we will continue to face speculative planning applications. Therefore, any future approach should include a mechanism for assessing those sites against our nature recovery priorities and environmental sensitivities, particularly where chalk streams and associated habitats may be affected. Ultimately, the objective should not be to predetermine a 20% requirement or a 40% one, but to develop an evidence-based, locally justified policy that delivers meaningful nature recovery, remains viable and can withstand examination. And I am very happy to push as hard as we can on that. I will be supporting this motion.
Councillor Knesko.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As the portfolio holder mentioned in this announcement, in this proposal rather, I wanted to add a few words of support to the motion. As a Cabinet, we strongly support the principle of trying to increase biodiversity net gain beyond 10% wherever possible. It's one of the first things that we discussed with officers when we took over the local plan making process 3 years ago. And I was in that meeting with Kate when she suggested that perhaps we ought to be aiming for 40%, and officers had to very politely manage her expectations just a little bit. So we were told at that time by officers that we needed strong evidence to back up those ambitions. So we asked officers to undertake the necessary research. They went away and they completed a biodiversity audit, which has already been referred to, which was completed in 2024. In short, it says that the borough doesn't have a strong enough case to mandate more than 10% BNG across the board. But, and this is a very important but, there may be scope to increase the BNG percentage across certain development sites. And that's something we've committed to investigating further as part of the local plan making process. And it's also an action that's been identified, as Chris has already said, as part of the biodiversity strategy. So it's something that we want to do as a Cabinet, and it is something that we're already delivering on. The question we have, though, is are we allowed by the planning rules to actually continue to do this? Well, as we all know, the government has indicated that we can expect yet another national planning policy framework to be published before the end of the summer. The draft of the latest document, which was published back in the spring, introduced a set of nationally mandated decision-making policies. This means it's quite an important change that many of the local plan policies will no longer be able to be written by local councils, but will instead be directed by the government, written by the government, and then used across the whole country by all local authorities. If this concept makes it through to the final version of the NPPF, then we might not have the scope to increase our own BNG percentage. We await the final published version of the new NPPF, and then we'll take advice and continue as we can. So just to reiterate, I do support this motion, and I'll do whatever I can to try to deliver it, but I can't guarantee that the government will let me do so.
Councillor Cubitt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support in principle the central message, but there is a fundamental contradiction at the heart of this debate. Virtually all our water in this borough comes from chalk aquifers, and yet we require developments to deliver higher biodiversity net gain, whilst continuing to place increasing pressures on those same aquifers through additional abstraction. And that is a non sequitur. And we've seen it with the Greywell Fens. And I don't know how we as a council are going to be able to square this circle at the moment, because, of course, seeking the high than the 10% minimum that was approved in the Environment Act is meaningless if, on the other hand, we're abstracting from the aquifers and the pipelines aren't getting here until 2040. So our chalk aquifers sustain our chalk streams, our wetlands, and our groundwater-dependent habitats. And if we over-abstract them, we know we undermine the very ecosystems that the biodiversity net gain is supposed to protect and enhance. We cannot claim to be improving biodiversity on paper whilst allowing the natural systems that support biodiversity to decline in reality. So I don't know what we can do in this chamber, because I think it's a very depressing situation. And it was also extremely frustrating
for the Conservatives recently to criticise the local plan position for the very subject that I'm discussing, which is this complete contradiction. And I don't know how we square this circle, but I don't even know whether there's any point in supporting this motion at this juncture until somebody works out how we can access water to supply the current population and the future population without further destroying our chalk aquifers. Thank you.
Councillor West.
I will not be supporting this motion today. I think that obviously biodiversity and nature is really important. We've got a pretty great natural environment in Basingstoke and Dean as an area, and I think that's important that we protect that. A lot of our policies and the national policies already go quite some way to protecting that. And into investing in making it a better place. I know that we're going to have, as going forward, new nature reserves in the area. There's lots of work being done to achieve that, and I don't think this additional push to add more responsibility to developers than they already have will get us anywhere where we need to be. Developers already face the BNG requirements as they stand. They face paying into community infrastructure levies and various other costs like that. They face really high building prices, and at the same time we need to be able to work with business partners and developers to be able to grow our town, to be able to create new amenities, to be able to find places to live for the thousands of people that are on our housing list. I don't see any benefit to us adding any extra pressures to what is an already precarious position for developers and for our ability to work with them and to have a thriving, flourishing economy in our town.
Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I've listened with interest to the comments from various sides of the chamber on this tonight. I'm in two minds about this motion. I wholeheartedly support the principle behind it, that we should be aiming for greater biodiversity net gain if it's all possible. The sad truth of the matter is, over the past 50 or 60 years, we've seen massive biodiversity decline through a number of things, not just the new town that's been developed and subsequent developments on top of that, but also agricultural methods, removal of hedgerows, a whole load of things. We've got a huge amount of work to do to try and restore that. I also note with dismay that South East Water are not capable of supplying water to large parts of their catchment area, like Kent, for instance, and I think the only solution to that is likely to be their renationalisation, which is something the incoming Prime Minister is seriously considering, at least for Thames Water, and maybe for South East Water as well. But I can't help thinking as well that a lot of this work, we've got a biodiversity task and finish group just setting up, so whatever is desired in this motion could feed into that. So I would see that as a quick win, that, you know, there is work already being set out to address these particular problems. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we have any more questions or comments. Oh, Councillor Trum.
So I agree with what Councillor Cubbett said and Councillor McCorbett has raised. The core issue here is the amount of construction that's ongoing, whilst we have water suppliers that are unable to cater for the increase in the housing that is being forced upon us one way or another. And I think the only thing, I'm still in a quandary as to which way to go, because the biodiversity question is clearly incredibly strong, but the issue of water supply and sewage and the pollution that comes with that is critical. I suppose we could only lean maybe towards our colleagues who have maybe slightly more of the ear of those in government to see if they can come up with some solutions. The privatisation and the situation of the water companies is a bigger subject, and even if we privatise them tomorrow, they're not going to be able to come up with any water anytime soon. Pushing some way to get that supply, the pipeline in, is about the only approach that we can effectively use to realise this problem. We have to push for the biodiversity and something that is sustainable. But whilst these water pressures and sewage pressures are on the system and struggling a lot, I don't see where we can go with it. So I have to agree with my colleague. Thank you.
Right, we're just about to run out of time. So, Councillor Harvey, I've got a couple of minutes left.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't take up that much time. I want to agree with the debate. I mean, the motion comes from a really good place, and it comes from a place that reflects the work that we've been doing, as colleagues have already said. This has been important to us to get the agenda of biodiversity net gain as part of our local plan. It was there in 2024 in terms of the policy framework that we were pushing very, very hard. We also need the evidence to back it up so that when it goes in front of inspectors, our wonderful friends in Whitehall don't come along and tell us that I'm terribly sorry, but you can't have that. And to be fair and regrettably, that has come from successive governments because they do not take this issue seriously. It is always the long screwdriver that comes out and tells us what you can't have in a local area when you know it's best for your local area. And the evidence base is important. It's important around our chalk streams, it's important around our area of outstanding natural beauty, but it's also important in the urban area because in the urban communities we have important green spaces that we too cherish and then too are important to us. And those increased housing targets that we've had handed down to us by government do have an impact. Because the default answer from the water companies is, yes, of course you can have all that development, and then I'll work out how to supply your water. The honesty that we've had from South East Water, to be fair to them, has probably got them into a significant amount of hot water. The problem is, they don't have a solution. There is no straightforward answer to the point that they have not invested in the infrastructure required over the past decade. And no government has stepped up over that period to force them to do so or to provide a regulatory framework with teeth enough to get them to do so. So central government has failed us miserably over this for well over a decade, where they have not enforced on those water companies the requirements that we would seek. They've quite happily paid their shareholders, they've quite happily taken their profit from the company, and it's the residents that suffer when the bills go up to pay for the mistakes they've made. And the shoe has now dropped on Southern Water. So this isn't just an issue that South East Water face. We knew this, we've known this in terms of the pressure that we've seen and the evidence that's come, but the shoe has now dropped on Southern Water too. And isn't it about time that these water companies step up and listen? And the issue I find fascinating, sit around a table with them, is there are good people working there. There are good people working for these water companies because they offer us projects and they offer us money to spend on BNG projects. They're quite happy to spend almost in compensation for the mess they've created after the fact. So BNG is really important, it matters. The water companies are our biggest issue and we have got to deal with this head on with government because of the impact it will have on residents in our borough, and it is an issue that isn't going to go away and we certainly will not leave it alone. We will keep putting the pressure on. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you everybody. I think we've run out of time on that one and I haven't had any further names come through. So I will pass back to Councillor Ganesh to sum up. Oh, sorry, Simon, second. This is the way the notes are.
It's perfectly fine, Madam Mayor. I know you've got support who'll prod you if I don't give you that Paddington Bear stare. I just want to add a moment of reality. We've talked a lot about planning, we've talked a lot about policy, we've talked about houses won't be built. And I've heard people in this chamber before that says, do you know what, previous governments, current governments, particularly this current government, because I've even heard it from civil servants, the view is build it and be damned. But actually what happens when the properties won't have any water? Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. We won't have properties built and be damned. We'll have permissions be damned and not built until the infrastructure comes. And I see lots of you nodding. There is a reality that says we have to be brutally honest. It won't be houses that we end up seeing built. It'll be thousands and thousands of permissions ready to be built when the problem is resolved, and suddenly we will see building like we have never seen in this borough. We often debate planning, and I think for me there's something about, in 2021, and Councillor Ganesh referred to it, we declared a climate emergency. It is important that that action is seen, if we are allowed by national government, to be put into practice. There is also something that says we need to acknowledge the situation that we're in, because we also know our hands are often tied to change policies linked to updating local plans. We find ourselves in a position where we've currently abandoned our local plan, So we can talk about sites, we can talk about planning applications. Again, we're about to be hit with more speculative development applications than I suspect we have seen for a very long time. And those won't be interested in where the infrastructure is. They won't be interested in whether the county council or us as a unitary can plan for that infrastructure, build schools so that those places can follow where we'd ordinarily have those planned houses being built. We need to wake up to what the real world is. We have a central government that wants build, build, build. They'll even wear hats saying it. I suspect some of our colleagues may have been seen wearing those hats. Exactly, Zander, I meant you. And all we'll have are, until that moment happens, permissions and permissions and permissions. And I think we just have to be really honest to our residents that, do you know what, we can talk about biodiversity, but when we've got speculative developments, frankly, our biodiversity is more of an urgency and an emergency than we will have ever seen, because we will suddenly now get developments in places and planning applications in places like Upper Swallock, because we have opened the door for that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, so now I'll call on Councillor Ganesh to sum up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to all the members who have contributed to this debate. I'm genuinely encouraged by the broad support from across the chamber. And I appreciate the thoughtful contributions from colleagues who have raised questions about viability, deliverability and local plan process and what is down the line from NPPF. Those are important considerations, and they are precisely why this motion has been framed as evidence-led approach rather than a predetermined outcome. Councillor Tomlin, Councillor Tugg, Councillor Kanishko, I can categorically assure you this motion does not impose a blanket requirement. All it asks is, nor does it seek to frustrate sustainable development. So it simply asks us to gather the evidence, undertake the necessary viability assessments, engage with our statutory partners and local stakeholders, and allow the local plan process to determine what is appropriate for our borough. So if the evidence demonstrates that the statutory 10% biodiversity net gain remains the right approach, then so be it, if that's what the evidence says. Equally, if the evidence shows that certain environmentally sensitive parts of our borough, particularly our internationally important chalk stream catchments and priority habitats, can sustainably support a higher standard, then we should have the opportunity to consider that through a proper democratic and planning process. I was particularly pleased to hear members recognise that this is about achieving balance. I completely get that. We all want to see homes, jobs, infrastructure that our communities need, but we also have responsibility to ensure that growth leaves behind a stronger natural environment. It was mentioned that how much decline we've had since 1960s by Councillor Tomlins, which is worrying. So, healthy ecosystem and the borough that is more resilient and the challenge of the climate challenges of the climate change is what we are facing right now. So this motion builds directly on climate change and climate emergency and ecological emergency declarations previously made by this council. It reflects our adopted climate change and air quality strategy and our biodiversity strategy. In many respects, this is simply the next logic step in turning those commitments into a practical policy. Colleagues, so future generations will judge us solely by the not judge us solely by the number of homes we build. They will also judge us by the quality of the environment we leave behind, the rivers we protect, the habitats we restore, the wildlife we enable to flourish, and whether we had the foresight to ensure that development enhanced rather than diminished the places people cherish. As a father of 2 years old, I hope that one day she and every child growing up in this borough can look back and know that we chose to leave them a healthier, greener and more resilient place than one we inherited. I hope that by supporting this motion today, we can all play a part in that endeavour. So this motion asks no more than good evidence, sound planning and informed decision making. I believe those are the principle every member of this council can support. Councillor West, I completely get where you stand. This motion does not undermine the new NPPF about to be released. All it asks is to gather the evidence and present through the local plan. So before I conclude, I would like to place on record my sincere thanks to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust and Natural Basingstoke for their guidance, technical expertise and constructive engagement in helping to shape this motion for the past few months. Their insight have been invaluable in ensuring that it's rooted in evidence and reflects the environmental challenges and opportunities facing our borough. Finally, I thank members for their constructive engagement throughout this debate and respectfully ask the Council to support this motion. Thank you, Councillor Kevin Chapman, for your amendments prior to the meeting, which we have in our updated paper. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Jay. So now we put it to the vote, and I'll ask, are we going to do recorded vote? Which means, yes, okay, thought you might want that. Okay, so off we go. Has everybody voted? Councillor Isaac?
I thought I had.
I think you pressed the speak, John.
Did I? Oh, right.
Your mic's on. The motion is carried. Right, we move on to questions from members of the council on notice. So I'll invite each questioner to ask your question. You have 2 minutes to speak, and if there's a supplementary, you get 1 minute, and the member will respond. They have 1 minute to respond, and we have 40 minutes in total to go to questions. We have quite a lot of questions, so if people can be brief and also refer to paper if they've written a long question or mini essay or whatever, so that we don't have to read through an awful lot of paperwork and we just get to the crux of the matter. Thank you. So number 1 is from Councillor, who is currently still known as Dillo.
Only at weekends. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not an essay, so I'll just read it out. Following the installation of AMPR cameras and new parking restrictions at KFC at the Basingstoke Leisure Park, despite the council confirming publicly that it had not been informed of their installation in advance, can the Cabinet member confirm whether the council has since engaged with KFC or the parking operator to establish why permission was not sought before these cameras and restrictions were introduced, and whether any action has been taken or is being considered by the council in response to the unauthorised installation. And the concerns raised obviously by residents and customers and delivery drivers who have been wrongly issued parking charge notices, and for the avoidance of doubt, there is no conflict of interest, as I wasn't one of the drivers that received a parking ticket.
That's a sad story. I'm disappointed. I'll have a word with them. What's your number plate?
Yeah, we weren't informed by KFC. We are the freeholders. They lease the land and the car park around it from us. There's nothing in the lease that prevents them putting in the camera system and controlling the car park in the way they do. Obviously, as soon as residents contact us to make complaints or raise queries, we do, in order to support local business, go off and talk to them. We've encouraged them to improve the signage and make it clear for everyone as possible, and we'll continue to inform them when we get bad feedback about it. We're pretty much powerless to do anything else because it's not an environmental health issue, it's not a planning issue, it's not in breach of a lease, so we can keep working with them. Obviously, customers can vote with their feet if they feel necessary. I'd certainly park over the road if you're using KFC. That little bit of 50 yards walk is actually really good for you.
Did you have a supplementary?
Just very, very quickly. So I'm just wondering whether the Cabinet member or the Council, is it possible that we can possibly guarantee that no further parking enforcement camera schemes will be permitted elsewhere at our leisure park?
We can only confirm what in the land we control, that we have no plans or intentions to do that. Although we may have to deal with antisocial behaviour within that car park in some form or fashion, we wouldn't want to be, we want to catch abusers rather than leisure visitors. But in private car parks, it's very difficult to have any control. What people do in their own car park or own driveway is really a matter for them. So I wouldn't say we possibly can promise that.
Councillor Watts.
As per the order paper, Madam Mayor.
Yes, first of all, can I apologise to Councillor Watts? In the February budget meeting, we went back, checked the webcast, and you did indeed raise a question in the general debate around the West Side Community Centre. So I'll give you an update now. On the 11th of May 2025, Cabinet did agree to acquire the library from Hampshire County Council, dispose of the whole site, along with the community centre, to Sovereign Network Group, who are going to undertake demolition and then obviously give us back the land once their master plans developed, so we could build a new community centre in a place that was more appropriate for it. Unfortunately, it's taken longer than expected, as all these things do. It was not helped by the fact that Hampshire County Council own the library, we own the community centre. SNG were going to take the land and look after demolition, conveyancing, and more surveys were done on the site revealing that this demolition would be and disposal of the asbestos would be more complex and cost more money, and that leads to rounds of renegotiation in terms of dealing with it. Parties are working together, we're close to an agreement, we are expecting it to be concluded in this financial year. So as of today, in answer to the question, we still own West Side Community Centre site. I think Hampshire County Council still own the library site, and we're trying to get that all brought together. So it will all be sorted hopefully by the end of the year, but it has been more complex. Obviously the important bit is the master plan. That will identify the new site, and that's what we really want, is a new community centre for Southam.
Question number 3. Sorry, supplementary. Did you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, co-leader. Extremely disappointing. There's been no movement in the last 18 months since this paper went to the Cabinet. Can you make sure that there is a decision made by the November for our Southam and Buckskin Overview Committee? Because it's a very important issue for the Southam residents, and this building has been derelict for nearly 3 years now.
Yeah, certainly we'll have a quick update prepared for the November meeting of that committee and all subsequent meetings if requested. So we're hoping that it will be progressing, but we'll keep you informed of any progress as and when it's made.
So we move on to question 3, which would be for Councillor James to answer. Paul, will you be answering? Thank you. Simon.
As per the order paper.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is some irony, actually, in Councillor St Manspound referring to Southview in the question, and this is before your time, Simon. But 20 years ago, the Conservative administration had plans to sell off these very allotments to build houses on them. We fought them and we saved them, and we did. So absolutely clear, this administration is committed to allotments. The council manages 1,164 allotment plots across 42 sites. And as of June, 72 plots were vacant and 58 of those are already under offer. There are 2,103 people on a waiting list, But our comprehensive review of the register suggests that numbers on that waiting list will reduce dramatically because of the review. We have recently finished a thorough review of the allotment service, resulting in 43 recommendations agreed with area allotment reps. These include streamlining the application process, introducing an annual waiting list audit, improving inspection management, upgrading our database and speeding up plot allocations. We're creating additional plots, we're improving the site infrastructure, including new toilet facilities, replacement water troughs and fencing across a number of sites where there are 300,000 committed in this last year's budget. Laura meets every 6 weeks with the chair of the Allotment Association, and she attends area rep and site rep and AGM meetings, and she is in the process of visiting all of our allotment sites. I can assure you that there is no greater champion in this chamber than Laura James for our allotments, and don't we know it. Taken together, these improvements represent the most significant review and investment in the allotment service for many years. So our focus isn't simply on managing the vacancies, as important as that is, but it's also on modernising the service, investing in the infrastructure that our tenants rely on, and creating the opportunities for residents who wish to enjoy the benefits of allotment gardening.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The level of dissatisfaction in the allotment holders' Facebook group is huge around the number of uncultivated and abandoned allotments. Allotment holders have, of course, noticed an increased presence since I submitted the question. I'm hopeful that is a coincidence. The question that I want to ask, and I believe the answer will be affirmative, is clearly the portfolio holder and the leader recognise that there is some improvement required.
Sometimes it makes me smile, Simon, when you particularly reference Facebook. I particularly don't believe everything you read on Facebook. Don't know where I get that from with particular... Let's talk about the allotments, because actually it's not just as a result of your question, and that's actually quite unfair, because Councillor James has been dealing with this issue since she's become a portfolio holder, and tackling some of those issues are quite difficult because of the nature of the allotment sites that we have. But that review and that work that our officer team has been undertaking for well more than a year has resulted in those 43 recommendations. And I'd like to thank the allotment area reps, and I'd like to thank the chair of the Allotment Association, who have participated in the development of those actions, and particularly the agreed areas that we're going to be concentrating on. That investment made in the budget last year didn't just happen by happen chance, and it didn't just happen because of a question in this chamber. It happened because we have put the support of our allotment holders, the investment in those allotments, and the importance they hold to us at the centre of what we do. And so we absolutely support allotments. And like we said last year in particular, for colleagues in South Ham and Buckskin, those allotments are just as important to us as any other allotments, and they are sacrosanct, and we will not be seeing them developed, I can assure you. Allotments are important. They make such a difference to so many residents, and so the way we manage them, the way we deliver the service is absolutely critical.
Thank you, Paul. Right, so the next question, question 4, is from Councillor Ganesh.
As per the order paper, Madam.
Right, thank you very much for the question. As mentioned earlier, we're expecting yet another national planning policy framework at some point this summer. This will be the 4th NPPF that we've been working with since we've been in administration. So we've become quite adept with officer help in terms of adapting our approach and our policies in response to the regular changes that are imposed on us by Whitehall. The latest draft of the NPPF doesn't make any material changes to the standard method calculation. But as I mentioned earlier, the most significant impact that the new NPPF is likely to have relates to the introduction of these nationally mandated decision-making policies. These are going to mean that we lose yet more scope to shape our local plan, and we become more reliant than ever on government-produced national templates. This is clearly incredibly frustrating and further undermines local democracy, in my view. However, there is potentially some good news. The likely new Prime Minister is certainly giving us all the impression that he believes in devolution more than the current government. And I'm sure all of us in this chamber hope that that translates into meaningful action, particularly in relation to planning policy.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Councillor Kanishko. I'm as frustrated as you are in what's happening, or some of the proposals in the draft NPPF. So the residents took the time to engage with the Reg 18 consultation in good faith. If the government's changes now mean more work, more delay, and an increased risk of speculative planning application, will the cabinet member commit to bringing a full public report to the committee setting out exactly what has changed, how much delay is now expected, and what steps the council will take to protect communities while the local plan is being updated?
So in short, yes, we have the scrutiny committee. We've been engaging with ENI and its predecessor EPH throughout the whole process. We plan to continue to do so. So yeah, we welcome the scrutiny. We don't have anything to hide, and we want to get your input and get residents' views on the process and make it as strong as possible.
Right, question 5, I've got Councillor Rand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As much as I've been looking forward to my first question, the opportunity to speak in Chamber, I will refer to the paper.
I did, so, that was Councillor Rand's maiden speech. We'll let you have another go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Rand. It's appreciated. We started communications in May 2025 for the new food waste service, which was introduced in October 2025. We started communications in May 2026 for the change in the bin service due in October this year, 2026. We have seen extensive coverage in the local press. A printed recycling leaflet has been delivered to 82,000 homes, and 250,000 hits has been reached on our Facebook page. We're now ramping up communications as we get closer to October. All members will have had a briefing pack issued on the 26th of June, outlining all of what I'm saying tonight and more, and one of which was followed through our regular councillor briefings, which you will have been attended to or be offered to attend. We set all of these milestones out in terms of the actions that we're following through on. You'll have seen front pages in the Gazette and inside pages in the Gazette, coverage on their website and on social media, and there are further press releases and briefings planned with the media. We run regular weekly social media posts specifically focused on our waste collection service. We outline a weekly new residents e-newsletter, and that reaches over 6,000 people. In August, Bing Hannahs will be distributed to all homes with information on the changes to the waste collection service. In September, all households will be sent a leaflet with a calendar detailing their collection dates and information on how to recycle more and reduce what they waste. And there are dedicated pages on our website with information on the changes and support to help residents to maximise what they can recycle, reduce and reuse. Your Place magazine will have stories, and it will be distributed to all homes in the borough in November. So as you can see, there is an extensive communications campaign underway. That was reported to the Resident Service Committee, of which you are a member, and you were at that committee when that was reported to you. And I do encourage all members to look at the briefing note you were sent on the 26th of June, which sets all of this out. Thank you, Madam.
Did you have a supplementary?
Thanks for that comprehensive reply. What I'd like to know is how much of the communication is not what is happening, but why is it happening? Are we making it clear to residents that the fact that they're losing part of their service is for a good reason, that we want to reduce waste overall? And if we are looking to reduce waste overall and generate less food waste, are we using enough of the County Council's scheme of Kitchen Heroes?
I'll get you a proper written answer, but I can assure you that all the schemes that are available to this council we are using, and we are also introducing schemes beyond that. So the idea to open up our bring bank sites to enable people to recycle pots, tubs, trays and cartons that they at the moment can't because the county council doesn't offer that service is an important step forward. The offer to offer a wee recycling service is again an additional service to that which we offer, because again we see the people's encouragement, people's desire to recycle more. And on top of all of that, I think it's important just to reflect, we have been clear that the previous government's Environment Act passed in 2021, which brings in all the rules around the tonnages and all the rules around what we have to do, and also the penalties if we do not, is an important driver for why we're doing this. We've also explained clearly in committee, as has been presented to committee, as has been presented to councillors in briefings, that the reason why we're doing this is because to reduce the waste tonnage is absolutely critical. That's the only way to actually get our recycling rate up. And we remain one of the lowest recycling rates in the South East, and that is something we want to change.
Question 6, Councillor Mamaloneni.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So those of you who know me very well, I always go for as per the order papers, but I would like to make a small plea, Madam Mayor. The plea is, my surname traveled all the way from Hyderabad to here and survived 25 years in Basingstoke in my council tax bill without any errors. But after 5 years, still it is struggling to get the printing process of our council papers, right? With this, I would like to present it saying that I would like to present as per the order papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, and I'll answer the question that's asked on the order paper. As you know, as you will know, Madam Mayor, and so will the councillor, the question was answered in full at the committee that you both attended. The Waste Resources and Action Programme guidance suggests that participation for Basingstoke and Deane should be between 45 and 55% based on the current weekly collection of food waste. At 55%, we're achieving an excellent participation rate. 1,000 households have been monitored across 26 roads, and over that 3-week period, a total average was 55%. So in a very short time, we've already achieved an exceptional rate compared to other councils. The guidance from Waste and Resources Action Plan programme suggests that the council operating a fortnightly waste collection can expect to see a participation rate of between 60 and 70% of food waste. The second phase of monitoring is currently taking place. A targeted communications campaign took place between the first and the second phase, where waste crews issued stickers on waste bins where no food waste caddy was presented for collection. As you'll know, how successful this trial was when the second round of data monitoring comes through and it's reviewed. And then we will consider if a stickering exercise should be repeated or we do something different. But we are focused on increasing participation. And you know this because it was presented to the committee at which you attended. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, unfortunately, it didn't answer the question that is there. The question categorically says, provide the details of the streets with the lowest food waste. According to the weight method of collecting the data, the street names are available in the data, and I'm asking for those street names, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
And as the council knows, a commitment was given to the Resident Services Committee that when the review of the work is being done, as the second monitoring phase is currently taking place, that will be brought back to the committee, and the committee will continue its debate on food waste, just as it did at the committee you attended.
Okay, Aaron, your next question.
As for the order papers, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Aaron, can I just check that you raised these concerns with Barratt and all the contractors? You do know, don't you, that they are responsible for the recladding of Crown Heights and not the Borough Council? I'm happy to help you here, and I'm happy to do your casework for you on this occasion. And I'll ask you I'll ask your questions. I'll take them to the Barratts for you, and come back to you and your residents, telling them what the answers are. Of course, you could have just picked up the phone to Barratts and asked them directly, as you are the ward councillor. But let me set it out. We've met with the developer and the project managers from the very start of the process to ensure that the residents' views have been thoroughly represented throughout. Ward members have been invited to be briefed, and so they could have been made aware of the key milestones. Residents have been kept updated on progress through monthly newsletters, monthly drop-in coffee mornings, as well as being able to contact the project management and the team at any time by the phone or email. There have been no reports to our environmental health team relating to potentially unsafe property conditions as a result of the cladding works. The housing team have not received any contact from residents to request rehousing as a result of the cladding works, but both teams remain available for residents to direct any concerns to, should there be any. There has been no increase to the completion timescales, with a final completion date still estimated to be April 2027. However, the developer has told us that he's currently assessing whether there is an opportunity to bring that date forward. We've also made contact with the project manager, and on the basis of what you've asked, Aaron, requested that those monthly newsletters are also sent to you as the ward councillors so that you can see the communications going on directly between them and the residents.
Any supplementary?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So I just want to remind the leader in this chamber. On 20th of July 2023, on one of the first meetings, one of the first motions is Crown Heights motion. If you remember very well, That motion has passed overwhelmingly with 49 people approving it. Subsequently, Cabinet also approved it. What exactly the motion says? It appoints a single point of contact for the actions to be addressed, and the second one is fortnightly the members needs to be informed about the actions that have taken it.
Question.
But that didn't happen.
Question, Aaron.
Yes, I'm putting the question.
Okay.
Why it has taken 3 years to action that item to this chamber?
I'm slightly confused, Aaron, so I'm going to come back to you with a written response. But just to bear in mind, you and the other ward councillors have been offered briefings on a regular basis by the developer, I'm led to believe. And on that basis, I'm very happy to go back to them and arrange whatever communication you would like to receive as ward councillors. It is for them to communicate with you directly, and we will arrange and support that. And to be fair to them, they've been actually talking directly with the residents, because they're the ones that are most important in all of this equation.
Taking 3 years to raise it.
Okay, that's the end of the questions, and we will move on to item 19, which is any questions to the Chair of Cabinet and or committee as per the paper below. Are there any questions anybody would like to raise regarding these previous committees? Okay, so moving on to that, I think we're finished. There we go. Didn't quite manage my 7:30 tonight, so sorry about that, folks. But at least there's no football on tonight, so nobody's missing anything. But we don't talk about that anymore now, do we?